70 armed officers entered a property built to celebrate childhood. They were not there for a celebration. They were there with a search warrant. March 2005, Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department. A team of investigators walks through the front gates of a 2,700-acre estate in Los Olivos, California. They carry search warrants, cameras, evidence bags. The property they are about to search is not a typical crime scene. It has a Ferris wheel, a zoo, a movie theater, a train station. It is called Neverland Ranch, and for nearly 2 decades it has been the home of Michael Jackson. But on this day, it is something else entirely. It is the center of a criminal investigation. The question is not just what happened here. The question is what this place was designed to be, and whether those two things can exist in the same space. Was Neverland Ranch a sanctuary built by a man trying to reclaim a stolen childhood? Or was it a carefully constructed environment that enabled something far darker? The answer, depending on who you ask, is not the same. The story of Neverland does not begin with Michael Jackson. It begins with a piece of land. In 1977, a real estate developer named William Bone purchased a sprawling ranch in the Santa Ynez Valley, roughly 120 miles north of Los Angeles. The property was remote. Rolling hills, oak trees, far from the urban sprawl of Southern California. Bone named it the Sycamore Valley Ranch. It was a working cattle ranch, nothing more. For the next decade, it remained largely untouched, a quiet piece of agricultural land in a quiet part of the state. But in 1987, everything changed. Michael Jackson, at the height of his fame, was looking for a home. Not just a house, a retreat, a place where he could disappear. His financial advisors showed him the Sycamore Valley Ranch. Jackson saw something no one else did. He saw potential. He purchased the property for $19.5 million. The first thing he did was change the name. Sycamore Valley Ranch became Neverland Ranch. The reference was deliberate. Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up, the boy who lived in a world of his own creation, far away from the rules and constraints of adulthood. Jackson identified with that story deeply. He had said so in interviews. He had spoken about his childhood, about being forced to perform from the age of 5, about never having time to play, about his father's strict discipline, about missing school, missing friends, missing everything that makes childhood childhood. Neverland, he said, was his way of getting that back, and so he built it. Over the next few years, Jackson transformed the property into something that defied easy categorization. It was part amusement park, part zoo, part private residence. There was a railway, a full-sized train that circled the property. There was a Ferris wheel, bumper cars, a carousel, a zipper ride, an arcade filled with vintage games, a movie theater with seats for 50 people. The zoo housed exotic animals, elephants, giraffes, orangutans, flamingos, snakes. Jackson employed a full-time staff to maintain the grounds: zookeepers, ride operators, gardeners, security personnel. At its peak, Neverland Ranch employed more than 150 people. The main house was a Tudor-style mansion. 6 bedrooms, multiple living areas, a dining room that could seat dozens. The decor was elaborate. Statues of children, paintings, gold fixtures, everything designed with a kind of fantastical opulence. But the house was just one part of the estate. The rest was the experience. Jackson opened Neverland to the public on specific occasions. He invited sick children, children from hospitals, children from Make-A-Wish Foundation. He hosted events, allowed them to ride the rides, meet the animals. He did not charge admission. He did not seek publicity for these events. For Jackson, Neverland was not a business. It was a mission. At least, that is how he described it. But even in the early years, there were questions. Why did a single man need an amusement park? Why fill a private estate with attractions designed for children? Why the constant presence of young visitors? Jackson's answer was always the same. He was giving children the kind of joy he never had. He was creating a place where they could be free, where they could escape their own pain. He framed it as altruism, as healing. But not everyone saw it that way. By the early 1990s, Neverland had become famous. It was featured in documentaries, in magazine spreads, It was a symbol of Jackson's eccentricity, but it was also a symbol of his wealth and influence. The property became a kind of myth. People spoke about it in whispers. Some called it a paradise. Others called it strange, unsettling. The turning point came in 1993. A 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler accused Michael Jackson of sexual abuse. Chandler claimed that the abuse had occurred at Neverland Ranch, in Jackson's bedroom. The allegations were explosive. The media coverage was relentless, and suddenly Neverland was no longer just a quirky estate. It was a potential crime scene. Jackson denied the allegations. He called them extortion. He said the boy's father, Evan Chandler, was trying to extract money from him. And, in fact, Evan Chandler was a dentist with financial problems. He had been recorded on tape discussing a plan to accuse Jackson unless a financial settlement was reached. The recording was damning, but it did not erase the allegations. It complicated them. In January 1994, Jackson reached a settlement with the Chandler family. The amount was reportedly between $15 and $23 million. The settlement included a clause that prevented the Chandlers from speaking publicly about the case. No criminal charges were filed. The case was closed, but the damage was done. Neverland was no longer innocent. It was tainted. And the questions that had always lingered in the background moved to the foreground. Why did Jackson invite children to stay overnight at his home? Why were there sleeping arrangements that placed him in close proximity to young boys? Why did he describe these relationships as pure and loving when others saw them as inappropriate? Jackson's defenders argued that his behavior was misunderstood, that he was a man-child, that his intentions were innocent, that he genuinely saw himself as a peer to the children he befriended, not as an adult with power over them. His critics argued the opposite, that his wealth and fame allowed him to create an environment where boundaries were erased, where parental supervision was minimized, where children were isolated. For the next decade, Neverland existed in a state of contradiction. Jackson continued to live there. He continued to host events. But the atmosphere had changed. Security became tighter. Media scrutiny intensified. Jackson himself became more reclusive. He still traveled, still performed. But Neverland was no longer the joyful retreat it had once been. It was a fortress. And inside that fortress, according to later allegations, troubling patterns continued. In 2003, a new accusation emerged. A boy named Gavin Arvizo, a cancer survivor who had visited Neverland multiple times, claimed that Jackson had abused him. The accusation led to a criminal investigation, and in November 2003, over 70 sheriff's deputies descended on Neverland Ranch with a search warrant. The search lasted hours. Investigators combed through every room. They seized computers, photographs, videos, documents. They took samples. They cataloged items. The search was documented, filmed. Parts of it were later shown in court. What they found became a matter of intense legal debate. Prosecutors claimed they found material that suggested an inappropriate interest in children. Defenders claimed the evidence was taken out of context, that it was legal, that it was being weaponized. The trial that followed in 2005 became one of the most publicized legal proceedings in modern history, and Neverland Ranch was at the center of it. During the trial, the prosecution painted Neverland as a trap, a place designed to lure children, to gain their trust, to isolate them from their families. They called witnesses who described the layout of the property, the security measures, the way Jackson controlled access. They described how children were given freedom to roam the estate, how they were treated like guests, how that treatment created a sense of obligation, a sense of indebtedness. The defense painted a different picture. They described Neverland as a haven, a place where sick and disadvantaged children could experience joy. They called witnesses who had visited Neverland and had positive experiences, who had never witnessed anything inappropriate, who described Jackson as kind, generous, childlike in his enthusiasm. The jury was tasked with deciding which version was true. In June 2005, after a trial that lasted nearly 5 months, the jury returned a verdict: not guilty on all counts. Michael Jackson was acquitted. He left the courthouse. He returned to Neverland. But he did not stay long. The trial had destroyed him. Physically, emotionally, financially. Neverland, once his sanctuary, now felt like a prison. He told friends he could no longer live there, that the place had been violated, that it no longer felt like home. In the months following the trial, Jackson spent less and less time at the estate. By 2006, he had effectively abandoned it. The property fell into disrepair. The rides stopped operating. The zoo animals were relocated. The staff was reduced. Neverland, which had once buzzed with activity, became silent, overgrown. In 2008, Jackson faced foreclosure on the property. He owed millions in debt. The estate was scheduled for auction. At the last minute, a financial firm called Colony Capital stepped in. They purchased the note. They restructured the debt. Jackson retained partial ownership, but he never returned. He was living in Los Angeles, preparing for his This Is It concert series, planning a comeback. He died in June 2009 without ever setting foot on Neverland again. After his death, the estate remained in limbo. Colony Capital managed the property. It was maintained, but barely. The amusement park equipment was removed. The zoo was long gone. What remained was a large, empty estate with a complicated history. In 2014, the property was quietly listed for sale. The asking price was $100 million. There were no buyers. The price dropped, and dropped again. In 2015, it was listed for $67 million. Still no buyers. The name was changed back to Sycamore Valley Ranch, as if erasing the Neverland Association would make it more marketable. It did not work. The problem was not the property, it was the story. Neverland Ranch was not just a piece of real estate, it was a symbol. And symbols carry weight. For some, it represented the tragedy of Michael Jackson. A man so damaged by his own childhood that he tried to rebuild it, only to have that effort used against him. For others, it represented something darker, a place where power and fame created conditions for abuse, where the line between generosity and manipulation was blurred beyond recognition. The truth, as with most things involving Michael Jackson, is not simple. It is layered, contradictory, uncomfortable. In 2019, the documentary Leaving Neverland aired on HBO. It featured two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who claimed that Jackson had sexually abused them as children. Both men had spent time at Neverland. Both described the estate in detail: the train station, the arcade, the bedroom. Their accounts were graphic, disturbing, and they reignited the debate about what Neverland really was. Supporters of Jackson dismissed the documentary as a lie. They pointed to inconsistencies in the men's stories. They noted that both had previously defended Jackson under oath. They argued that the documentary was a cash grab, an attempt to profit from a dead man's name. But the documentary also forced a reckoning. It asked uncomfortable questions. Can a place be both a gift and a weapon? Can good intentions coexist with harmful actions? Can we separate the creation from the creator? And what do we do with a legacy that contains both beauty and pain? These are not questions with easy answers, and Neverland Ranch, sitting empty in the San Ynez Valley, embodies all of them. In 2020, billionaire businessman Ron Burkle purchased the property for $22 million, a fraction of its original asking price. Burkle, a former associate of Jackson, said he had no plans to turn it into a tourist attraction. He said he respected Jackson's memory, that the property would remain private. As of now, it remains closed to the public. The gates are locked. The grounds are maintained, but empty. There are no children, no rides, no animals, just land and silence. Which raises the final question. What is Neverland Ranch now? Without Michael Jackson, without the controversy, without the myth, what does it represent? For some, it is a monument to excess, to the dangerous combination of wealth, fame, and unchecked behavior. For others, it is a tragedy, a dream that was misunderstood, twisted, destroyed by people who could not see past their own suspicions. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Neverland was both things. It was a place built with genuine love for children, And it was a place where boundaries were not respected, where the normal rules of adult-child interaction did not apply, where Michael Jackson's wealth allowed him to create an environment that served his needs regardless of how it appeared to the outside world. The question is not whether Neverland was a paradise or a trap. The question is whether it could have been both. Whether a place built with good intentions can still cause harm. Whether the absence of malice excuses the presence of danger. These are questions the legal system tried to answer. The jury in 2005 said no abuse occurred, but the court of public opinion has never reached a consensus. And Neverland Ranch, abandoned and silent, stands as a reminder that some questions do not have clean answers. Michael Jackson once said that Neverland was his heart, that it was the only place he felt free, that it represented everything he valued: innocence, joy, imagination. But hearts can be complicated. They can hold love and pain at the same time. They can be pure in intention and flawed in execution. Neverland Ranch was Michael Jackson's heart, and like him it was misunderstood, celebrated, condemned, defended, destroyed. It was a place that meant different things to different people, and in the end it became a place that no one wanted, not the fans, not the critics, not even Jackson himself. The estate sits there still. 2,700 acres of California land. The rides are gone, the animals are gone, the visitors are gone. What remains is a shell, a structure, a piece of history that no one quite knows what to do with. Some say it should be torn down, that it is a reminder of something painful. Others say it should be preserved, that it is part of Jackson's legacy, for better or worse. But most people do not think about it at all because Neverland Ranch, in its current state, is irrelevant. It is a ghost, a place that once mattered and now does not. But the questions it raises are not irrelevant. They are essential, because Neverland was not unique. It was an extreme example, yes, but the dynamics it represented exist everywhere. The way power isolates, the way wealth creates alternate realities, the way good intentions can be used to justify questionable behavior, the way society struggles to hold complicated figures accountable without reducing them to villains or saints. Neverland Ranch was Michael Jackson's attempt to create a world where he made the rules. And the world responded by asking whether anyone should have that much control, whether anyone should be able to build a private kingdom and invite children into it without scrutiny. The answer, legally, came in 2005. Not guilty. But the answer morally is still being debated, and it will continue to be debated as long as people care about Michael Jackson. As long as his music is played, as long as his image is sold, as long as his story is told. Neverland Ranch is part of that story. It cannot be separated from it, it cannot be erased, and it cannot be simplified. It was a place of wonder, and it was a place of suspicion. It was a sanctuary, and it was a crime scene. It was both. And that is what makes it so difficult to reconcile. If you have made it this far, you have probably formed your own opinion. Or maybe you have not. Maybe you are still uncertain. That is okay. Uncertainty is appropriate here, because the story of Neverland Ranch does not offer closure. It offers questions, and those questions are worth sitting with. What do we owe to the children who visited that place? What do we owe to Michael Jackson's memory? What do we owe to the truth, even when the truth is incomplete? These are not rhetorical questions. They are real, and they matter. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and if this made you think differently about something you thought you understood, pass it along, because stories like this one do not end. They just keep asking us to pay attention.